Welcome to the 41st reading of my memoir, The Innocence of Guilt. Life as a factory girl. In August of 1958, I began the working life of a factory girl. I reported to the floor manager in his glass-framed office on the main floor, and he led me to the hand finishing section. Mum probably told Dad that with my long hair I shouldn't work on the machines. I wore my summer school clothes, white blouse, green and white circular polka dot skirt I'd managed to at last finish in needlework class, matching polka dot ponytail holder, and white ankle socks to go with my slip-on shoes. Fresh, clean, ready for sacrifice. One of the women at the section advised me to bring a cushion from home for the hard wooden stool at the bench allocated me. The supervisor showed me how to work tiny stitches on a sample piece of fabric until I could be trusted with working on actual coats. The needles were tiny, and each worker purchased their own packet, along with a thimble and a pair of scissors. If you dropped a needle on the floor, you made sure to get down on your hands and knees to find it. At first I failed miserably, and all day for days and days I stitched and unpicked and stitched and unpicked until tears filled my eyes and uselessness my soul. But little by little I achieved a standard that passed the test, but never at the speed required. Once in a while an inspector with a stopwatch stood behind every worker and recorded how many stitches they sewed per minute. Such stress. I learned to sew silk linings, sleeves, and felt collars into cloth coats, and every piece of work had its price. At the end of each day, the supervisor added all the pieces up, and if I had worked fast and earned my flat rate, I had earned my money and could accept my pay packet with pride. The factory expected each worker to earn it or more in order to be considered worth the hire. I rarely managed to achieve that and was constantly called upstairs to the head office to be chastised. Because my father obtained the job for me on his merits, I suffered the shame of knowing that, unlike the other workers, I likely wouldn't be sacked, or the management might face losing him, he who worked all the hours that God gave and never complained. I had become an inhabitant of my once imagined city of the dead, and dead was how I felt much of the time. The mature women ridiculed me for having no experience in the ways of the world, told rude jokes in front of me they knew I barely grasped, mocked my girlish breasts that still didn't fill out the smallest bra, and told me to get rid of the ponytail. I couldn't do much about my breasts, but I did go and get my hair cut short to please them, although afterwards I regretted it. I might as well have gone and worked at Mason's. At least there I would have been surrounded by books, even if forbidden to read them. The first day at the job, a girl on my bench recognized me from my time in Mr. Fuchs's class at North Street Junior. Gwenda, who along with Valerie at Wilson Marriage I had no memory of, described the little girl who struggled to keep control of a classroom by reading out loud to them as they hopped all over the desks in defiance of her impossible job. Although it happened all of 7 years ago, I couldn't resist asking her about the book prize, hoping perhaps to hear that Mr. Fuchs searched and searched for me, and when he couldn't find me, in sadness gave the book to another child. After Gwenda casually remarked that she didn't recall who won it, and did it matter anyway, the wound I imagined closed opened up to expose my 8-year-old self. Gwenda and her close friend Joan befriended me and were always pleasant, despite the times when emotional pain consumed me and compelled me to ignore them. A few weeks later, I received confirmation in the post that I had passed Part 1 of the Royal Society of Arts English examination, an exam I barely remembered sitting and hadn't given a thought to since leaving school. My dad embarrassed me by boasting all over the factory floors about his smart daughter when at home I received nothing but put-downs. That he gloried in my achievement angered me, for I suspected he bragged about me to enhance his already popular image. He always put a smile on his face for the workers. Difficult for me to reconcile with the image of the father I faced at home. Thinking perhaps I could gain the sympathy of the workers in my section, I told them that he frequently hit me. Nasty lying girl. Life at the factory was boring routine. We clocked in and clocked out, inserting our cardboard name cards in the machine in the front hallway. This machine faithfully recorded our every move. If the card punched in 1 minute late, we received a reprimand by the management. Tea breaks were issued morning and afternoon, although I frequently went downstairs to the lavatory and ran cold water over my wrists to wake myself up from the drowsiness that overcame me. Every afternoon from 3 to 4 o'clock, we listened to BBC Radio's Music While You Work, broadcast live with a different band every day playing popular music. I looked forward to that. Music always lifted my spirits. Because I knew all the words to the melodies, I sang along for the entire hour. Every Friday, payday, we took turns bringing a bag of sweets to pass around the bench of roughly 12 women. I soon learnt it didn't pay to buy cheap sweets. Only something as good as quality street chocolates would do. Periodically, a message came to all the sections to congregate in the main area of the factory floor. Either we were all in trouble, no union, so no protection, or a rush job was coming through and we'd be working to a deadline. Some of us took coats home then to work on in our spare time. I did this only for a short while because Mum refused to let me put the electric light on before 6 o'clock. To save money. In our tiny back gloomy living room, I found it impossible to find the good light I needed to sew those tiny felling stitches. Word occasionally filtered through the sections that a coat was coming through on order for someone famous, usually a male pop star. This added a little excitement to our monotonous work. The younger women drew lots to see who won the privilege of writing a love letter to him, which would be sewn into the lining. Then the rest added their little comments, imagining him finding it one day. The older women found this hilarious, and the supervisor pretended not to notice. If discovered by the management, we stood to lose our jobs. A few weeks after I started work, Mum fell ill. At the farm, she said her doctor wanted her to have an operation, but she didn't trust hospitals. She was a nurse, she said, with a knowing look on her face, and therefore knew more than anybody what went on in them. It had something to do with her womb. She stayed in bed because she couldn't stand upright without hemorrhaging and passing out. Dad told the factory management that I needed to stay home and look after the family, and they agreed to let me keep my job, the result of his influence with them. Dad gave me the housekeeping money and the freedom to spend it on the running of the house. I must have picked up the skills of housekeeping through osmosis because for 2 weeks I managed it perfectly and took pride in it. When Mum slowly made her way downstairs to reclaim her territory, I was saddened to give it up. Although thankful she recovered, no operation, I hated going back to the factory. There I came under close supervision, but at home for 2 precious weeks had been my own boss. My dad and I hadn't fought once, and he appreciated everything I did. One day at work, a shock. My old needlework teacher from Wilson Marriage headed towards my section with a group of girls. I couldn't bear to let her see me, so kept my head well down. I heard her tell the girls to look at the tiny stitches and see how fast we could sew, and I prayed she wouldn't recognize me. She didn't appear to. She walked right past me as if I was invisible. Thank you for listening. Please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment on this reading, and hopefully you will tune in to the next one. Bye for now.